Welcome, everybody, to Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition in partnership with Triax 57 News, our broadcast partner here, and the one who makes all of this possible with the editing and the production and all of that good stuff. I am Joe Martucci. We have Palma Shiles, Dan Skeldon here. We are in the midst of local summer September. I've noticed, you're out at the beach in September. It's nice for many reasons. We know that. But one of the reasons I like is that you just don't get burned as quickly there. I mean, usually I end up in July with a couple of blotchy red spots. I do tan pretty well once that burn comes in. Where are you guys on that burn tan? You guys, is it just burn all the time, or do you burn and tan? Is it always tan? Where are we, Dan, on that?
Well, for me, I burn. I'm Irish, partly Irish, and I burn no matter what time of year it is. But no, that September sun, you're absolutely right. It's equivalent to what, like the March sun.
Yeah.
You can be out in it a lot longer and not have to worry about burning.
Palma, you're Italian. You got Italian blood in there, so hopefully you have that burned and tan, or maybe just all tan.
Yeah, well, despite, the fair complexion, I do tan usually. I might burn a little bit in the beginning, but then I tan. However, I also use sunscreen.
Sunscreen is very important. We are a pro sunscreen show here. You got to make sure you have the sunscreen. That is for sure. All right, we're gonna move away from the sun. We'll talk about the water here for this episode. We're gonna talk about the top 3 storm surges in New Jersey's history, America, and the world. And there's really no better person to talk to this about than our guest here, Hurricane Hal, Dr. Hal Needham. He's an extreme weather and data scientist focusing on flood information systems and storm surge. Hurricane Hal is the lead writer and podcast host for GeoTrek and the owner of U-Surge. That's U, the letter U dash Surge, which tracks high water marks across the country, including in New Jersey. Dr. Hal, thanks for joining. I have one bone to pick with you, and I was on your U-Surge website. You said Sandy Hook was in North Jersey? It's in Central Jersey.
Yeah, that's right. No, I appreciate the critique, man. No, for sure. But yeah, I'll have to change that up on the database.
All right. Well, I'll be keeping tabs on that. Make sure you have Sandy Hook / North Jersey. I think where you were trying to go with this is during Sandy, talking about the flooding further up north in the state. But as a Central Jersey resident, and most of my life in Central Jersey, I just had to make sure we weren't in North Jersey there when you talk about Sandy Hook.
No, for sure. And I think what I was thinking is, yeah, no, it's great to be here. I think I was thinking it's kind of farther north on the Atlantic side, there, but you're right. It's not really North Jersey.
Don't let him bully you.
Now, Hal, if you switch it to Central Jersey, you're going to get people saying, hey, there is no Central Jersey.
Yeah.
Huge can of worms. Joe's the pot stirrer here, so.
I do want to say this, though, before we get into serious conversation. My brother-in-law, who grew up in Bergen County and lives in Bergen County all the way in the northern part of New Jersey, he thinks that New Brunswick is in South Jersey, which is just south of the Raritan River. And he thinks that Sandy Hook is in South Jersey. I said, well, what do you call Margate? He said, I don't have a word for that. So,
maybe that's it. It's all relative.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I grew up going to Stone Harbor, Avalon, so like everything north of Wildwood is North Jersey for me. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's all relative, right?
Well, there is at the Cape May Canal, which separates like the far lower part of Cape May County from the rest. There is a sign on one of the bridges that says North Jersey. Anything north of there and in South Jersey with that arrow. You guys, do you know that sign, Palma and Dan? You know what I'm talking about there?
I do. I got a picture in front of it, and I love it. And I think it's to each his own. I think it's right. It's where you are in Jersey is in the eye of the beholder.
I agree with that.
I guess so.
So,
go ahead, Palma.
I'd like to start just first by asking, what inspired you to become Hurricane Hal?
Yeah, I grew up just so excited about extreme weather. For growing up in the Northeast and on the Jersey-Pennsylvania border area, blizzards were the big thing. But then I just had the opportunity to move to the Gulf Coast and do a master's and PhD. And at that time, storm surges were this huge deal. This was about 15 to 20 years ago. So I ended up building the U.S. storm surge database. I was in Louisiana 8 years, and now I've been in Galveston, Texas, the site of the deadliest disaster in U.S. history the last 9 years. And storm surge is a big deal down here, like it is for you guys as well.
So Hal, a very insightful of your parents to name you with a first name that begins with H, just so the alliteration. I wanted to ask you how you got the nickname, like, and when you got the nickname, and then in the spirit of your nickname, how many hurricanes off the top of your head have you been in or chased?
Yeah. Great questions. You know, when I built the first storm surge database for the US, I thought we got to communicate this stuff. So in 2010, just for that hurricane season, I made a blog called Hurricane Hal's Storm Surge Blog. And the website actually had the number 2010 in it. I just thought it was a one-year thing. But then people were so interested in this, and then the name Hurricane Hal stuck. So what I thought would be just for the 2010 season, it stuck here 15 years later. As far as hurricanes and tropical storms, I've either lived through or done field work in 23 hurricanes and tropical storms, mostly in the States. I've been in the eye of Hurricane Grace in Mexico and done some field work and after some hurricanes internationally as well.
Wow.
And Hal, tell us about like your education. Like, where, were you always studying tropical meteorology when you were, a student in school? Like, how did that work out for you?
You know, it's interesting. I went to Penn State. I started studying meteorology. I switched over to geography, that interface between the physical and the human. And then I lived in the Middle East for a few years. I lived in interior Alaska a few years, where I really professionally became a climate scientist. And my interest was really, for much of my life, Arctic weather, cold weather, snow and mountains, but just an opportunity to move south and study storm surges. I really embraced the tropical thing. When I moved to Louisiana, I'm like, okay, if I'm in Louisiana, this was 3 years after Katrina. I'm like, I'm just throwing myself into storm surge. Storm surge is the world's most deadly and destructive natural hazard. When I got to Louisiana in 2008, I couldn't believe there was no database. So this became my passion, really building out these storm surge data. And I just went head first into the whole tropical thing, and I've kind of been there ever since.
And Hurricane Hal, that's what like USurge does. It tracks high water marks across the country. And yeah, that's such a useful tool, I think, for explaining storm surge. I know like at the Jersey Shore, when Sandy hits, everyone knows what that high water mark was. And we're going to get into later the top surges in Jersey and in the country and internationally. But, I think you filled a huge missing piece there by creating that database, because it's nice for everyone across the country to have that reference. What is our high water mark? What is our worst case scenario? And what, Mother Nature has done to us before. So I think it's an important database people should know about.
Thank you, Dan. And you're spot on. And if I could urge people, what we really miss often is the deeper history. When I was in Hurricane Helene in Tampa last year, I was going up and down streets. I mean, the National Hurricane Center said most of these houses are going to be underwater. Almost everyone I talked to was dismissive. We've been here since 1978. We've never flooded. Everyone that I talked to was very dismissive. The next morning, these houses are underwater. People are in the streets in disbelief. For them, it's the first time they ever flooded. For me, it was the fourth time they flooded, because I knew they flooded twice in 1848 and once in 1921. So when you get this deeper history, you begin to see risk in a very different perspective. And a lot of places, they say, wow, we're at more risk than we realized. And our house would have actually flooded multiple times before. It hasn't maybe been in living memory or recent memory.
All right, good stuff. We're going to cut the break. We'll come right back with Hurricane Hal. We're going to talk about those top 3 storm surges in New Jersey, America, and the globe. Stay tuned. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Well, welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk. Really a peak of hurricane season. No better guest than who we've been talking with, Dr. Hal Needham, Hurricane Hal, along with Joe Martucci and Palma Shiles. I'm Dan Skeldon. Hal, let's dig right into it. Top 3 surges in New Jersey. I could put Joe on the spot and have him try to name a few years, but we're just going to go right to the expert, the man with the database. And you want to go in reverse order, 3, 2, 1, kind of build the suspense?
Yeah, let's do it. So number 3, Hurricane Donna in 1960, that area really getting, say, west of Sandy Hook, which, by the way, is a famous area in central New Jersey.
Absolutely.
Perth Amboy, Keyport, that area not far from Staten Island got over 10 feet of storm tide, the mixture of storm surge and tide. That was Hurricane Donna, 1960. Number 2 is actually the 1944 hurricane. A lot of folks forget about this. The storm tide level reached 10.5 feet in Belmar. That's over by Asbury Park. And then number 1, not a lot of surprise to folks, Superstorm Sandy. You know, Sandy just flooding so much of the Jersey coastline, but the highest high water mark, again, getting west of Sandy Hook over towards Perth Amboy, those areas by Keyport. Over there, they got between 13.5 and 14.5 feet of storm tide. Again, that's close to the Jersey-New York border, not far from Staten Island. And it's interesting when we see these areas repeat for a peak storm surge. Usually it means something's going on. There's kind of a funnel that happens there. Getting over by Sandy Hook, Perth Amboy, not far from the New York border, water really funnels in there. There's a reason why 2 of the 3 highest storm surges in Jersey history happened in that same stretch of coast.
Yeah, no, if I had to guess, I would have definitely put Sandy 1. Let me ask you this, Hal. You know, a lot of residents in the southern part of Jersey Shore that have been around for a while would say the 1962 nor'easter, you know, had really significant surge. Just curious what the numbers are on that. And then my kind of thought on this is maybe it wasn't the highest surge, but there was 5 consecutive significant surges. So maybe it was a quantity over a quality thing.
You know, the Ash Wednesday storm there in 62, it stands out. It's exactly what you're saying, Joe. These extratropical systems have a very broad wind field, and that was a long duration event. So the water levels were getting up to as high as 8.6 feet in Atlantic City, but that lasted for more than 3 high tide cycles. So we had 3 high tide cycles with a tremendous amount of surge and a lot of erosion. When you get a long duration event like that, you're really exacerbating not only the flood impacts, but the erosion as well. That stands out for South Jersey as definitely one of the most memorable storm surges for sure.
And how far do records go back in New Jersey overall? I mean, it's something I should probably know, having been a Jersey meteorologist forever. But like, as far as your database goes, yeah, you know, I'm surprised at Donna. I don't think I would have guessed Donna, Joe. I don't know about you, but obviously
I wouldn't have.
Yeah, that was a surprise. But yeah, how far back do the records go?
Yeah, we're running records generally since 1880. The beauty for South Jersey, there's a tide gauge in Atlantic City that's measuring hourly high water mark since 1911. That's one of the longest duration current tide gauges that's out there. And that's something that really helps us reconstruct this. We have a very good idea of what's happened since 1911, but we have anecdotal and other accounts as well going back to the late 1800s.
Yeah, there was a landfalling hurricane in New Jersey. The last landfalling hurricane actually was like 1903, right?
1903, Dan.
I was wondering if it went back that far or not.
Yeah, and that's something we don't have that on the tide gauge record, but it's something we do everything we can to bring together any anecdotal information out of newspapers, photographs, journals, and we're often adding new events. So that's something that we're going to go back. Actually, I'm giving the keynote address at the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers Conference in Atlantic City in October, and we're going to actually go back through those early 40 years just to make sure we've gotten everything. So we may be updating it. Stay tuned for any updates to the database.
Okay.
Now, shifting to the U.S., what are the top 3 storm surges in our nation's history?
Yeah, great question. So number 3 is Hurricane Carla in 1961, over 22 feet of storm surge in coastal Texas down by Port Lavaca. Number 2 and number 1 happen in the same location. It's past Christian, Mississippi. They're not going to be surprises. Hurricane Camille, 1969, a Cat 5 landfall in coastal Mississippi, 24.6-foot storm surge there in past Christian. And then Katrina, 2005, it's a 27.9-foot, close to 28-foot storm surge. When I started building the database, I thought, what a coincidence. The same location gets number 1 and number 2. I didn't fully understand. Part of the attribute of a storm surge is the storm itself, but a lot of it's your coastal geography, where you have shallow water, where you have a right angle in the coastline where water funnels in, bays, harbors, things like that. There are reasons why these areas like past Christian, Mississippi are number 1 and 2 in the U.S., and areas, say, west of Sandy Hook for New Jersey are number 1 and 3. These areas that are the bad actors tend to repeat over time, and there's a reason why they're so vulnerable.
Now, just to follow up, do you feel that there are certain areas where people tend not to forget? As you said earlier, like as time goes on, if you haven't had a major flooding event, you kind of say, "Oh no, I'll be fine. We're not going to flood." Do you see that typical in locations more than others?
Generally, areas that have had a big hit in the last 20 years, people take it serious. For the longest time, my biggest concern was west coast of Florida, because they had not had landfalling Gulf hurricanes in places like Tampa, St. Pete, Fort Myers until recent years. So people would say, oh, I've been through hurricanes my whole life. They had not really seen a landfalling hurricane pushing a big surge. So I get concerned about areas that have had near misses, but they haven't actually seen a direct hit. People say, oh, we're familiar with hurricanes. They haven't actually seen the worst case. And I wanted to actually just very briefly go back to Jersey. What stands out to me when I look at the South Jersey record, this is very, very unusual. We don't have any high water marks in Atlantic City exceeding 9 feet, but 9 times we've had high water marks between 8 and 9 feet. That's really unusual. For most places, you have 1 or 2 events that really stand out from the others. In Jersey, we don't see that. We don't see anything over 9 feet, but we see 8 feet reach 9 times. I think the reason why is you actually haven't had all the stars align in South Jersey. If you had a Hurricane Isabel, 2003, if you had that 100 miles farther north, if you had Sandy 50, 60 miles farther south, you would see high water marks substantially higher than you've seen in South Jersey. So that's another concern. Places that have not quite had all the stars align, people tend to think they've seen the worst, and they haven't. Unfortunately for South Jersey, as bad as Sandy was, Donna, 1944, I don't think all the stars have actually aligned yet. I'm not trying to be a doomsday person, but I think we could see something substantially higher than we have, unfortunately.
I think you're absolutely correct. And Jim Everwine, who's been on this show a few times, you know, he's said for decades probably, but, you know, the worst case scenario for New Jersey is a Cat 3 hurricane. You know, we haven't seen that. I mean, Sandy, technically a post-tropical cyclone. It was, you know, a Cat 1. But I just to agree with your point, Hal, you're absolutely right. We haven't fully seen the stars align. That's good news, but we haven't fully seen the stars align.
That Isabel track going to the northwest, something like that coming up Delaware Bay as far as the center of circulation with South Jersey on the north side of that, that would be your worst case scenario. We haven't seen that track yet, but imagine even a Cat 1 or Cat 2 taking that track, we could see high water marks substantially than we've seen in our recorded history.
And Hal, like you said too, like the shape of the coastline. I mean, Delaware Bay's a funnel, would funnel all that water up, you know, towards the Delaware River in Philadelphia, and of course all the water into Jersey as well. So you're right. I think we've been blessed because that's an unusual storm track, but it has happened before, and you know, will happen again when those stars align. We just hope it's, you know, way down the road.
Yeah, for sure. You hope you don't see that. But when we see the curve on Superstorm Sandy, when we see that northwest track with Isabel, you know it can happen. And it could be 200 years from now. It could be this year. But at some point, we're going to, I think, see a track like that. And we have to be prepared for that.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. All right. That being said, let's get to the top 3 in the world here. And then just when you're done with that, just compare that again to the #1 event in New Jersey, which was Sandy, just so people get an idea.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. You know, the second highest surges in the world are in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico or Gulf Coast. But when you get overseas to the northern Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, we're talking India, Bangladesh, It's unbelievable. Their highest storm surge was very close to 45 feet, if you can imagine that. And even more dire, they had 7 surges exceed Katrina in a 10-year period from 1960 to 1970. These were tremendous surges all over 29 feet, and they've had 6 surges kill more than 100,000 people. High impact, really high surges. And again, it's where you have a concave shape on the coast, funneling that water in, and the bathymetry, or the water depth, is very, very shallow there. You can easily get surges over 30 feet in that part of the world. To compare it back to Jersey, the highest high water marks we're seeing are 13.5 to 14.5 feet in Superstorm Sandy back in 2012. So imagine water levels easily more than twice that height, and the most extreme getting up to 3 times the height. It's just hard to even imagine storm surge that high.
No, I can't imagine that. So
it's and you know, areas like that are so flat, the storm surge can go in 30 miles, 35 miles. So again, it can really be off the coast as well, a big inland impact. So fortunately, we don't see anything like that. And I wanted to mention too, again, some of the attributes have to do with the storm, but some with the coastal setup. As bad as Katrina was, if you move Katrina 150 miles to the east, the surge drops 12 feet. And so that's really important to remember. A lot of it has to do with the coastal setup. The physics are not there for coastal Jersey to see anything, 25, 30 or more. Just we don't have the physics with the setup and the coastal profile. But still, you get a 15, 17-foot surge. It's doing a world of damage, loss of life, and tremendous economic damage as well.
Yeah, we saw, we just had Erin off the coast back in late August, and that brought like 7.5, Joe, like almost 8, and there were water rescues and fire departments were involved, and that's just a hurricane off the coast. Like you said, you have that perfect scenario, that perpendicular landfall, geography and meteorology working together, and you're going to bring 150% of the storm surge that higher than the Jersey Shore has ever seen before into South Jersey. So, it's something that you do have to mentally know is possible and prepare for.
That's exactly right. We could see worse than we've seen. And also these moderate level surges. I mean, we know sea levels are rising. A lot of coastal areas are subsiding or sinking. And you just get a prolonged event with a lot of erosion. It's just going to do a big impact. It's going to wash that sand out from underneath people's homes, erode the dunes. I mean, all of that is a big coastal impact.
All right. Well, that's our top 3 of New Jersey, USA, and the globe. We'll take one more break. We'll come back with Hurricane Hal on Tidal Flooding Talk.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk, and we are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. We would like to remind our viewers to stay safe and act fast. Floodwaters are not just an inconvenience. They can cause fires, contamination, and serious structural damage. If severe flooding is expected and officials recommend that you evacuate, don't wait, just go. Have an emergency plan in place, prepare for the worst, and prioritize safety over all else.
All right, we are back with Hurricane Hal. Last segment here. We were talking off camera, talking a little bit about the Saffir-Simpson scale and the hurricane cone. Tell us what your thoughts are on that. We'd love to hear from you, just being such an expert in this field.
Yeah, we have a scale based on wind, the Saffir-Simpson scale. But most people die and most of the damages come from water, and the two don't correlate. So you hear people saying all the time, oh, this is only a Cat 1. Oh, it's been downgraded. It's no longer a Cat 1. Now it's a tropical storm. If there's 8 feet of water in your house, it doesn't matter. So keep in mind, pay very close attention to the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service, your trusted local meteorologist. The flood forecast and the wind forecast can be very different things. And so don't be blindsided or think something's only a Cat 1. And then as far as the cone of uncertainty, we see that cone from the Hurricane Center. A lot of people think think that's an impact cone. They think if I'm in the cone, bad. If I'm out of the cone, good. If I saw something, a hurricane coming towards the Delmarva Peninsula, Chesapeake Bay, I'm very concerned for South Jersey or, central Jersey there. So you could be outside the cone and still have very deadly impacts in your area. Again, it's not an impacts cone. It's just talking about the center of circulation. A lot of big flooding can happen outside the cone.
All
Yeah, I
really
mean,
good points.
I know that people in New Jersey can understand that to a degree because, I mean, you said it yourself that Sandy brought the largest storm surge and they downgraded that to, Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah,
What
exactly right.
what other misconceptions do you think there are when people hear that there's a hurricane coming?
One of the big ones is people tend to think if the eye is going over your house, that's a worst case scenario. For coastal flooding, if I was in Atlantic City, I would much rather have the eye go over Atlantic City than go from southeast to northwest through through Delaware Bay. I mean, that again, if you're on the north side of this thing, Cape May up through Atlantic City, something moving up Delaware Bay, I think would be a worst case scenario. So a direct strike from an eye is actually not a worst case scenario. It's more if you're on the onshore wind part of this north of the center of circulation is where you're going to get the worst hit.
Yep.
All really great stuff, Hal. We really appreciate it. Just real quick, before we get into the one thing we can't stop talking about, where can people follow you on social media or a good website?
Yeah, for sure. Check out the GeoTrek podcast. That's GeoTrek. We're telling stories about extreme weather and natural disasters not covered by the mainstream media. You can check out GeoTrek on all the social media platforms. And you can follow me as Hurricane Hal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm in active hurricanes, and I'm forecasting almost every day during tropical season.
You're a busy man. I don't. Hopefully, you get some sleep after November 30th. But we appreciate you having coming on here. So we're going to end with the one thing we can't stop talking about: tidal flooding or otherwise. Dan, we'll kick it off with you. What's going on?
Well, I'm going to keep it on topic. I usually don't, but I'm interested here. I love top three lists, like you did earlier. I love just talking about storm surge. I'm a native New Englander. Off the top of your head, New England. Do you know the top storm surge, or can I ask, is the Long Island Express, the Hurricane of 38 that zipped up the coast? I got to imagine that's going to be there. But any,
actually, in the U.S. top 10 storm surge list, there's only one that happened in New England. It's the Long Island Express from 1938, and the highest high water mark actually happened in Rhode Island, getting up around 18, 19 feet back in 1938.
Yeah, in Providence, Narragansett Bay, the funnel, just like you said earlier. I kind of figured it was up there, but I wanted you to confirm that. So
they had big hits in 1938, 1944, and then several times in the 50s. So you go back in that's why you have to know that deeper history. Yeah. It's a more dangerous place up there than people realize.
Yeah, and they're immune now. They think they're immune because 91 Bob was the last one. So they're overdue up there. But I appreciate you confirming that. Thank you.
Awesome. Palma?
Yeah, I mean, this has been very interesting, Hurricane Hal. I will say that. The one thing I can't stop talking about, I guess it really is starting to feel like fall to me, is approaching, and it's, Halloween will be here before you know it, and I'm hoping, it will be another anniversary for Superstorm Sandy, so that's coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Things have been so quiet and we have to stay vigilant. We remember Sandy was late October. This season, in some ways, reminds me of 2022. Just things were so quiet in August and September. And all of a sudden, I'm in a Cat 4 hurricane in Fort Myers. So again, it's a long hurricane season. We still got a lot more innings to go, if you will. Hopefully nothing happens, but we got to stay vigilant for sure.
For my thing here, I'll give a pitch and some kudos over to Hurricane Hal for coming to Atlantic City in October. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person there and hearing your keynote address. You said it earlier at the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers. Can you give us like a little hint on what you're talking about and your familiarity with Atlantic City? Oh,
for sure. Yeah, I'm so excited to go back to South Jersey. We grew up going to Avalon, Stone Harbor. It's going to be great to be back there. October 21st to 23rd, the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers. I'm giving the keynote address, and it's called The Recipe for Risk Analysis, knowing your deep history, looking at big events that have happened in your neighborhood but not hit your community to understand your risk, and then considering environmental change like climate change and development developmental changes in your watershed or on your coastline, this is what we call the recipe for risk analysis. We'll be talking about it in Atlantic City from October 21st to the 23rd.
Stuff, and we'll leave it to you, the last word. What's the one thing you can't stop thinking about, tidal flooding or otherwise?
You know, it's just, I think knowing that history and being vigilant for what could happen. And as far as Jersey concerns, my favorite Wawas in the world are right there in central New Jersey in Sandy Hook. By the way, that's central Jersey.
That's right. That's absolutely correct.
I'm going to be looking at their flood and wind risk analysis when I'm up there and probably grabbing a soft pretzel on the way.
Okay, we love that. We love that. You know, if there's a good Central Jersey place, you know, there's going to be a Wawa there as well. So
You know, I'll say if Hurricane House says there's a Central Jersey, then there's a Central Jersey. Okay, Joe?
Love that.
Hey, I really
I'm slowly
appreciate the invite.
converting people.
This was great meeting all of you. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Thanks, Hal.
Yeah,
Appreciate
excellent having you, Hal. We appreciate. We'd love to have you come back on a future episode. But thank you so much again. Go follow him. He's got really interesting content, and maybe most importantly, just has such an extreme passion for weather. It's really, really cool. So that wraps it up for this week's episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. We'll be back with you next Tuesday with a new episode. We'll talk with you then.